It looks like fun, it feels like bonding. But here's what the research actually shows. You get on the floor with your baby, you shake the toy, you make the sounds, you introduce the new thing. You say good job when they reach for it. You keep things moving so they don't get bored. You do all of it because you love them, because you read that play is important, because you want to give them every possible advantage. And almost everything you just did, the shaking, the introducing, the good job, the keeping things moving, is quietly working against the very development you were trying to support. This is not about blame. The way most parents play with their babies is the way they were shown, the way culture tells them to, the way toy companies and parenting apps and well-meaning family members have all reinforced. It feels right because it looks right. It looks engaged, it looks attentive, it looks like a good parent doing their job. But Dr. Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, a developmental psychologist at Temple University and one of the world's leading researchers on infant play and learning, has spent decades studying exactly this: what parents do when they play with their babies, and what the research says about what actually works. She keeps a wall in her office displaying her least favorite toys marketed to anxious parents, because the anxiety driving those purchases, the fear that without enough stimulation, enough engagement, enough educational input, our babies will fall behind. That anxiety is leading parents to do things during play that are actively counterproductive. There are 6 specific play mistakes, 6 common, well-meaning, completely normal things parents do that the research shows are working against their baby's development. Some of them will surprise you. One of them, number 4, is something that almost every parent does every single time they play. It sounds harmless, it sounds positive, and the science behind what it actually does will change the way you play for good. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just know what not to do. You'll understand why your baby's brain works the way it does during play, and what it actually needs from you in those moments on the floor together.
Mistake 1. You lead instead of follow. This is the most foundational mistake on this list, and it is where almost every other play mistake begins. It is the error underneath the errors, and it is deeply counterintuitive because it runs against every instinct a caring parent has. When you play with your baby, who decides what happens? For most parents, the honest answer is, I do. I choose the toy. I introduce the activity. I direct the attention. I decide what we're doing next. And the reason feels obvious. I know more than my baby. I know which toy is age-appropriate, which activity is stimulating, which direction to point their attention for optimal learning. But here is what the research shows. The direction of attention in a play interaction is not neutral. It changes everything about what gets built in the baby's brain. Seattle Children's Hospital defines child-directed play as a specific and evidence-backed form of one-to-one interaction in which the child leads and the parent follows, watching, describing, joining the baby's chosen focus rather than redirecting it. The research supporting this approach is extensive and consistent. Child-directed play builds self-confidence, strengthens the parent-child relationship, and produces measurably better developmental outcomes than parent-directed play. Here's the neurological reason why. When a baby's attention naturally lands on something, a light, a texture, a sound, a corner of the room, they are not randomly distracted. Their brain has identified something worth investigating. The seeking system, one of the primary emotional circuits identified by neuroscientist Dr. Jaak Panksepp, has activated. It is dopamine-driven curiosity, the same system that underlies all learning, all exploration, all genuine intellectual development. And it is firing because the baby chose it. When you redirect their attention to the toy you chose, you are not adding stimulation. You are interrupting the very neurological process you were trying to activate. You are pulling them out of genuine curiosity and asking them to perform interest in your agenda. Research cited in Psychology Today confirms that interruptions during a baby's self-directed focus, including well-meaning attempts to show them something else, have a measurably negative impact on attention and engagement. The baby who was deeply absorbed in looking at a shadow on the wall had more active cognitive engagement in that moment than the baby who was being shown the expensive educational toy. What to do instead? Before you introduce anything, watch first. Get on the floor at your baby's level and follow their eyes. What are they looking at? What are they reaching toward? What is already holding their attention? Start there. join what they found. That is child-directed play, and that is where the real development happens.
Mistake 2. You fill every quiet moment. Silence during play feels like failure to most parents. If the baby is quiet, if there is a pause, if they seem to slow down, the instinct is immediate. Do something, say something, introduce something, keep the energy moving. Because a baby who isn't actively engaged is a baby who is missing an opportunity. Except that is precisely backwards. Dr. Mona Amen, a pediatrician and infant development expert, has written directly about this misconception. There is a common belief, she explains, that parents need to be continuously engaging their baby to support developmental growth. That belief, she says, is wrong, and not just a little wrong. It actively prevents something the baby's brain needs that has no substitute: boredom. Actual boredom. When a baby is left with a moment of quiet, with a simple object and no parent directing their attention, something remarkable happens. Their own curiosity is forced to activate. The brain, with nothing external driving it, begins to generate its own engagement. The baby shakes the toy to see if it makes a sound. They turn it over, look at the bottom, put it in their mouth. They are not following an adult's script. They are writing their own. This self-generated exploration is what researchers call intrinsically motivated play. And the cognitive skills it builds, problem solving, attention, creativity, independent thinking, are fundamentally different from and developmentally superior to the skills built through externally directed play. The baby who figures out that shaking the toy makes a sound has had a completely different neurological experience than the baby whose parents shook the toy to show them. Filling every quiet moment during play doesn't enrich your baby's development. It outsources it. It teaches the baby at a body level that stimulation comes from outside, that when thin, GS get quiet, something external will arrive to fill the space. The baby who is never allowed to be bored never learns to fill the space themselves. What to do instead? Practice what pediatrician Dr. Mona Amen calls the autonomy intervention model. Pause before you intervene. Let the quiet sit for a moment. Watch what your baby does with it. The discomfort you feel in that pause is the feeling of your baby's brain doing some of its most important work. Mistake 3. You offer too many toys at once. The more options your baby has, the more they can explore. The more they can explore, the more they learn. That logic feels airtight. And it is completely wrong. A landmark study published in the journal Infant Behavior and Development by researchers at the University of Toledo gave toddlers either 4 toys or 16 toys to play with in a free play session. The findings were unambiguous. Children given 4 toys engaged in longer, deeper, more creative, and more developmentally rich play than children given 16 toys. The abundance of options did not expand their play. It shrank it. The mechanism behind this is something called decision fatigue, a well-documented phenomenon in cognitive science where an excess of choices overwhelms the brain's executive function and leads to shallower engagement with each option. In adults, this shows up as the paralysis of a restaurant menu that's too long. In babies, whose executive function is just beginning to develop and is far more easily overwhelmed, it shows up as what researchers call toy flitting, the behavior parents often interpret as their baby being curious and engaged when they are actually in a state of overstimulated, unfocused surface engagement. Dr. Hirsch Pasek, whose research on infant learning has been foundational in this field, has been direct on this point. The stimulation arms race, the belief that more toys, more gadgets, more educational products equals better development, is not supported by the science. What she and her colleagues find consistently is that simpler environments, with fewer options and more open-ended objects, produce deeper, more cognitively rich play. There is a related finding that surprises most parents. The toys that produce the longest sustained engagement in babies are not the ones with the most features, the most lights, the most sounds. They are simple, open-ended objects, things that can be mouthed, turned, steed, banged, transferred from hand to hand. Things without a single correct use, things that require the baby's brain to generate the interaction rather than just respond to it. What to do instead? Rotate. Instead of putting all available toys in the play space, offer 3 or 4 at a time. When engagement with those fades, swap them for a different small set. The toy that disappeared for 2 weeks becomes interesting again when it returns. Your baby isn't bored of their toys. They are overwhelmed by them. Mistake 4. You say good job, the one that will surprise you. This is the one I mentioned at the beginning, the one almost every parent does every time they play. And it is the one the research is most unambiguous about. Your baby reaches for the toy. Good job. They shake it. Good job. They look at you. Good job. It comes automatically, reflexively, with complete love and zero harmful intent. It is how most parents were taught to be encouraging. It sounds positive. It sounds supportive. Here is what it is actually doing. Decades of research by developmental psychologist Carol Dweck and the extensive body of research that followed her foundational work shows consistently that evaluative praise that judges an outcome rather than describing an action, undermines the very motivation it is intended to build. Specifically, it converts what was intrinsic motivation, the baby's own internal desire to explore, to reach, to try, into extrinsic motivation. Motivation that depends on the reward of external approval. Here is the practical consequence of that shift. The baby who reaches for a toy because they are genuinely curious about it is doing something neurologically different from the baby who reaches for a toy partly because they've learned that reaching produces a good job from the adult. The first baby is self-driven. The second baby is beginning to perform for an audience. Research published in the journal Psychological Bulletin and reviewed by scholars including Jennifer Henderlong, Corpus shows that children who receive frequent evaluative praise, especially praise for outcomes rather than process, become more dependent on external validation, less willing to attempt things they might fail at, and less intrinsically motivated over time. They develop what researchers call contingent self-worth, the belief that their value depends on their performance. And the foundation of that pattern is being laid in these early play moments. Even more specifically, a study looking at parents praising infants between 14 and 38 months found that how parents praised in those early years predicted the child's mindset at age 7 to 8. Children whose parents used descriptive, process-focused language, narrating what the child was doing rather than judging it, were significantly more likely to believe their abilities could grow, to enjoy challenges, and to attribute success to effort. Children who received frequent evaluative praise showed more fixed mindset characteristics years later. What to do instead? Describe instead of evaluate. Instead of good job, try you grabbed that. Instead of wow, you're so smart, try you kept trying until you got it. Instead of good job stacking those, try you put the red one on top of the blue one. This is called descriptive commenting. It keeps the baby's internal experience as the center of the interaction rather than replacing it with your evaluation of their performance. And the research on its long-term impact is extraordinary. Mistake 5. You rescue them from frustration. Too quickly, your baby is trying to reach something, or grasp something, or figure out how something works, and they're frustrated. Their face is doing the thing, their sounds are escalating, and every instinct you have says, help them, fix it, solve it, because you love them and you cannot stand watching them struggle. That instinct is love, and acting on it immediately, every time, is one of the most developmentally costly things you can do during play. Frustration during play is not a problem to be solved. It is a learning state. Specifically, it is the state in which the brain is working hardest, forming new connections, developing persistence, building what researchers call frustration tolerance, which is one of the foundational components of emotional regulation and executive function. Research published in Frontiers in Education, examining what happens when parents intervene during moments of challenge in child-directed play, found that minimal intervention, being present and supportive without solving the problem, produced significantly better learning outcomes than immediate help. When parents stepped in and solved the problem for the child's sense of competence and independent capability measurably decreased. When parents waited, acknowledged the frustration, and let the child work through it with minimal scaffolding, the child's persistence, confidence, and problem-solving skills increased. Janet Lansbury, one of the most widely respected voices in infant development and a student of Magda Gerber's RIE philosophy, describes this principle with a phrase that has stayed with thousands of parents. Be an interested spectator, not an uninvolved one, not a distant one. Present, warm, attentive, but not intervening. Watching with genuine interest and visible confidence that your baby can figure this out. That visible confidence matters more than most parents realize. Your baby reads you constantly during play. When you rush to fix their struggle, you send a signal their nervous system registers immediately. This situation required adult intervention. I could not handle it alone. When you wait, when you stay calm and present and let them work, you send a completely different signal. You've got this. I believe in your ability to figure it out. What to do? When your baby hits frustration during play, try narrating before intervening. That's tricky, isn't it? Said calmly, without urgency. Then wait. Give them 30 seconds or a minute, or as long as the frustration stays productive rather than escalating into distress. You'll develop a feel for the difference, and when you do step in, do as little as possible, just enough to unstick them, then step back and let them take it from there.
Mistake 6. You play at the wrong time. This last one is the most practical on the list, and it is the one that makes everything else we've talked about either work beautifully or completely fall apart, because none of the other 5 things matter if the timing is wrong. Babies have what researchers call alert windows, specific periods in their natural daily rhythm where they are neurologically primed for engagement. Their cortisol is at the right level, their sensory system is regulated. Their brain is in a state of what developmental psychologists call quiet alertness, the optimal state for taking in new information, for social interaction, for genuine play. Outside of those windows, when a baby is hungry, overtired, overstimulated, or moving towards sleep, the brain is not in a learning state. It is in a management state. Every resource is being used to manage the discomfort or the fatigue, and none is available for the kind of deep, curious, exploratory engagement that produces real development. And yet most parents plan play around their own schedule rather than their baby's state. We play when we have time, when we come home from work, when we've finished what we were doing, when it seems like a reasonable time to get on the floor. And then we wonder why our baby seems uninterested, fussy, distracted, impossible to engage. They're not uninterested in play. They're not difficult. They're simply not in the window. And no amount of great toys or child-directed patience or descriptive commenting will produce meaningful developmental engagement in a baby whose brain is not in the state to receive it. Neonatologist Dr. Armando Castillo has noted that babies' developing senses become overwhelmed when engaged at the wrong times. When they are already managing tiredness or hunger or overstimulation, any additional input tips the nervous system into overload rather than an engagement. What looks like a baby who doesn't want to play is often a baby whose nervous system is trying to tell you something completely different. What to do? Start paying attention to your baby's natural rhythm over several days. Watch for the windows, the periods after a good sleep and a feed where your baby is bright-eyed, alert, and looking around with that open, receptive energy. That is your window. Even 20 minutes of genuine, child-directed, quiet, alert play in that window will produce more development than 2 hours of well-intentioned play in the wrong state.
6 mistakes. Leading instead of following. Filling every quiet moment. Too many toys. The good job reflex. Rescuing frustration. Wrong timing. Every single one of them comes from love, from effort, from a parent trying to do the right thing with the information they had. And that matters. It matters enormously. Because the parent who is concerned enough to be watching something like this, who wants to understand what actually helps, rather than just what feels helpful, that parent is already doing something that no toy or technique can replicate. They are paying attention. Here's what the research distills to. The most developmental thing you can do during play is also the simplest and the hardest. Get quiet. Get on the floor. Watch your baby. Follow what they find interesting. Describe what you see without judging it. Let the frustration sit for a moment before you fix it. And trust, genuinely trust, that your baby's brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do when you give it the space and the safety to do it. You don't need to be an entertainer during play. You need to be a witness, the most engaged, attentive, confident witness your baby has ever had. Someone who watches them with genuine curiosity and communicates through every action and non-action. I see what you're doing. I find it interesting. You don't need me to take over. You've got this. Dr. Jaak Panksepp, whose research on the brain's play system showed that play behaviors are wired into the subcortical circuitry of every mammal, that they represent one of the oldest, deepest evolutionary drives we have, described play deprivation as something close to hunger. The urge to play, he argued, is as primary as the urge to eat. It does not need to be created in your baby. It is already there, built in, waiting to be honored. What it needs from you is not direction, not constant praise, not a full toy bin and a packed activity schedule. It needs space. It needs your presence without your agenda. It needs a parent who can get on the floor and follow rather than lead. That shift from leading to following, from entertaining to witnessing, from doing to watching, is one of the most profound things you can offer your baby during play. And it costs nothing but the willingness to trust that what your baby finds on their own is worth more than anything you could hand them. If this video gave you something, one thing you'll do differently the next time you get on the floor, share it with another parent. Because the science of play is one of the most misunderstood areas of infant development, and getting it right doesn't require more effort. It requires a different kind of attention. I'll see you in the next one.